The greatest king in human history is standing outside his own palace, and the guards do not know who he is. His clothes are torn, his feet are bleeding. He has been walking for weeks. When he finally tells them his name, they laugh in his face. When he insists, they hit him and shove him back into the street. Behind those gates, on his throne, another man is ruling his kingdom. A man with his exact face, his exact voice, wearing his ring. The Prophet Sulayman alayhi salam has just lost everything. And the most disturbing part of the story is not that it happened, it is that Allah allowed it to happen. This is not folklore. The core of what I am about to tell you is in the Quran. Surah Sad, the 34th verse. وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ سُلَيْمَنَ وَأَلْقَيْنَا عَلَى كُرْسِيِّهِ جَسَادًا ثُمَّ أَنَبَ. And we tested Sulayman, and we placed upon his throne a body. Then he turned back to us. Allah himself is telling us that he tested the most powerful man who ever lived. And during that test, something else sat on his throne. A body, a being, a presence the Quran does not name. So who was that being? How did he get there? And why would Allah, who had given Sulayman alayhi salam complete command over the Jinn, the wind, and every living creature on earth, allow one of those very Jinn to take his kingdom from him? Over the next half hour, I'm going to walk you through this story the way the classical scholars told it. From the Quran, from Tafsir Ibn Kathir, from narrations preserved through Ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhu. I will mark exactly where the Quran ends and the commentary begins, so you always know what is revelation and what is scholarship. By the end, you will see why some scholars believe these 40 days may have been the most important 40 days of Sulayman's entire life. We grew up hearing the smallest possible version of who Sulayman alayhi salam was. A wise king, a just judge, the son of Dawood alayhi salam, a man who understood the speech of birds and ants. That is not wrong. It is just the doorway. Surah Al-Anbiya tells us Allah gave him the wind. It carried him a month's journey in a morning and a month's journey in an evening. Surah Saba tells us molten brass flowed for him from the earth like a spring of water. Surah An-Naml tells us the Jinn, the humans, and the birds marched in his army in ordered ranks like a disciplined river. In Surah Sad, the very next verse after the one we just read, Sulayman makes a dua that no other prophet ever made. Rabbi gfir li, wa hab li mulkan la yanbaghi li ahadin min ba'di, innaka anta al-wahhab. My Lord, forgive me, and grant me a kingdom that will not belong to anyone after me. You are the bestower. Here is what most people miss. That dua, the one Sulayman is most famous for, was not the beginning of his story. It was the ending. It is the prayer he made after the night a Jinn stole his throne. Which means everything we know him for, the ants, the hoopoe, the Queen of Saba, the throne brought from Yemen in the blink of an eye, all of it came after this. After the 40 days. So the real question is not what happened that night. The real question is what those 40 days did to him and what Allah was building inside him while everything outside him was being taken away. Here is the path. First the kingdom, then the ring, then the wife in the palace, then the Jinn, then the exile, then the return, and what Allah was after the whole time. Let us begin. To understand why Allah tested Sulayman with this trial, you have to understand what he was sitting on top of. He was not a king the way we think of kings. He was not even a king the way his father, Dawood alayhi salam, was a king. And Dawood commanded armies, killed Jalut with a single stone, and was given the Zabur as a revealed book. Sulayman was given more. He says it himself. Surah An-Naml, the 16th verse. Ya ayyuhan nasu, ulimna mantiqat tayri, wa utina min kulli shay. O mankind, we have been taught the speech of birds, and we have been given from all things. We have been given from all things. No prophet before him said it, no prophet after him said it, and Allah did not correct him. His armies were 3 species wide, humans for soldiers and craftsmen, Jinn for the work no human could do, diving for pearls, lifting stones the weight of mountains, building structures that still puzzle scholars today, and birds for scouts and messengers in a language he alone had been taught. The wind was his transport, not metaphorically, literally. Allah subjected the wind to him so that 2 months of travel happened in a single day, and brass, the most valuable building material of the ancient world, ran for him out of the ground like water. This is what Sulayman ruled. So ask the obvious question, when Allah gives a man this much, what is left to threaten him? No army on earth could touch him, no empire could rival him, no poverty could reach him. The only thing left that can test a man at this level is his own heart, and Allah was about to test it. The whole test would turn on one small object, an object the Quran does not name, but that scholars have been writing about for over 1,000 years. A ring. The narrations preserved in Tafsir ibn Kathir, going back through Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, describe a khatam, a signet ring that Sulayman alayhi salam wore. Inscribed on it was a name of Allah. I want to be careful here. The Quran does not mention this ring directly. The Quran says only that Allah placed a body on his throne and that Sulayman returned to Allah. The full story, the ring, the theft, the 40 days, comes from the tafsir tradition. Some of it traces back to companions, some of it to later narrators. Classical scholars like Ibn Kathir wrote it down with the warning that the details vary across reports. So I will tell you the story the scholars told. Where the Quran is silent, I will tell you it is silent. Where the commentary fills in, I will tell you it is commentary. The ring was not the source of Sulayman's power. That would be shirk, and no prophet operates that way. The ring was a sign, the way a king's crown is a sign. The jinn, the birds, and the armies recognized it as the mark of the one Allah had placed over them. When Sulayman wore the ring, the kingdom obeyed. When Sulayman did not wear the ring, the kingdom did not recognize him. So think about what that means. Sulayman's power was never in him. It was not in his body. It was not in his bloodline. It was not in his wisdom. It was a gift Allah hung on his finger, the way you might give your child a key to your house. The key is not the house. The key just opens it, and a key can be taken back. The test that was coming for Sulayman was not whether he could hold his kingdom. The test was whether, when Allah took it from him, he would still know who the real king is. And the door to that test cracked open through one of his wives. There is a famous hadith in Sahih Bukhari, narrated from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Sulayman ibn Dawood said, "Tonight I will go to my wives, 70 of them, and each will bear a son who will fight in the path of Allah." But he did not say, "Insha'Allah." So he went around to them, and not one of them bore a child, except a single woman who bore half a child. By the one in whose hand is my soul, if he had said, "Insha'Allah," they would have all fought in the path of Allah as horsemen. Sahih Bukhari, Hadith number 3424. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told this story as a warning about claiming the future without surrendering it to Allah. It is also a window into how vast Sulayman's household was. Inside that household, in the tafsir tradition, one wife in particular keeps appearing in this story. Some narrations call her Jarada. Some call her Aminah. She was the daughter of a king Sulayman had defeated in war, and in the years after the conquest, she carried a private grief for her father. According to the commentary, not the Quran, she kept a small statue of her father in her chamber and grieved for him in private. When Sulayman discovered it, he ordered the statue destroyed. But classical scholars have noted that the simple fact that this object existed inside the Prophet's own household for any length of time without his knowledge was something he should have caught sooner. The Quran itself does not give us this reason. The Quran says only, "Wa laqad fatanna Sulayman," and "we tested Sulayman." But the principle in the commentary is striking. Even a prophet of Allah, given dominion over the winds and the jinn, was held responsible for what happened in his own house. The bigger the kingdom, the more weight goes with the silence inside it. And on a perfectly ordinary day, a bath, a ring handed off for a moment, a small detail no one would have thought to mark, the kingdom of Sulayman alayhi salam fell. The narrations in the tafsir tradition give the jinn a name, Sakhr. In some reports, Sakhr al-Marid, Sakhr the rebellious. He was, according to those reports, one of the jinn forced into Sulayman's service, resentful, patient, waiting. Whether his name was really Sakhr or someone else, the scholars differ. What they agree on is that the being who took the throne was not an ordinary jinn. He was one of the most powerful of his kind, and he had been waiting for this moment, possibly for years. According to the commentary, Sulayman alayhi salam was about to enter a place where a believer should not carry an object inscribed with the name of Allah. A washroom. So he took the ring off. He gave it to one of his wives to hold, and he went in. Sakhr had been watching for exactly this moment. He took the form of Sulayman, not an imitation, a perfect replication. The same face, the same voice, the same way of standing. He came to the woman holding the ring and asked for it back. She did not hesitate. She placed it in his palm. The kingdom changed hands in a single breath. The jinn walked out wearing Sulayman's face. He put the ring on. He went to the throne room, and not one minister, not one general, not one bird in the sky could tell that the man on the throne was not who he appeared to be. The ring was on the right hand. That was all that mattered. When the real Sulayman alayhi salam came out of the washroom and asked for his ring, his wife gave him a confused look. Had she not just given it to him? She remembered her own husband walking in, asking for it, and the ring leaving her hand. The reaction of the household was the same. Strangers, confusion, polite dismissal. The real Sulayman walked out of his own palace, and no one stopped him. When Sulayman walked through his own gates without the ring, the guards saw a stranger, not because his face had changed. The narrations say it was because Allah had allowed the mark of authority to leave him. The jinn on the throne wore the appearance. Sulayman, on the outside, wore nothing. He told them who he was. They did not believe him. He went to his ministers. They did not believe him. He went to his wives. They did not believe him. He went to his own mother, and she looked at the thin man at her door and shook her head. He walked. The narrations say it was 40 days. 40 is a number Allah uses again and again with the prophets. 40 days for Musa alayhi salam on the mountain. 40 years for Bani Israel in the desert. 40 days in the cave for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam before the first revelation came down. 40 seems to be the number Allah uses when He wants to break a heart open enough to fill it with something new. And during those days, the king who commanded the wind worked as a fisherman. The narrations say he caught fish on the shore of a small village, and the people there took pity on him, and they paid him in fish. 2 fish for a day's work. That was the wage of the man who had ruled the world. Sit with that picture for a moment. The Prophet of Allah, in a stranger's village, gutting fish on a wooden board. No throne, no army, no wind. Just a man and his hands, and the salt and the smell of the sea. If you have ever lost something huge, if you have ever been overlooked by people who should have known you, if you have ever had your name stripped from you in a single day, this is your story too. Because whatever Allah was doing in those 40 days, He was not punishing Sulayman. He was emptying him. There is a difference. Punishment moves a person away from Allah. Emptying pulls a person closer, and somewhere in those days, the King of Kings stopped asking why this had happened to him. He started asking what Allah was building. If this story, told the way the classical scholars told it, with sources, without cutting corners, is the kind of thing you want more of, You can keep these videos free and long form by supporting the channel through the link below, or by sharing this video with one person you think needs to hear the rest of it. What happens next, and what a fish had to do with it, is something most Muslims have never been told. On the 40th day, Sulayman was given his usual pay, 2 fish. He sat down to clean them. His knife struck something solid inside the second one. He pulled it out. His ring. The narrations explain how it ended up there. As the Jinn felt his time on the throne running out, startled in some reports by a hawk that would not obey him, he took the ring off and hurled it into the sea. A fish swallowed it, and Allah, who had allowed the loss, allowed the return. Sulayman put the ring on, and the world turned. The birds knew first. The hoopoes that had scouted for his armies, the falcons that had watched from his palace walls. They came down to the shore. The wind shifted. By the time he reached the gates of his palace, the illusion on the throne was already dissolving. Saka, or whoever the Jinn really was, could not hold the form once the trust returned to its rightful bearer. He fled. In one narration, Sulayman caught him, sealed him inside a box of lead with the seal of Allah, and threw him into the sea, where he is still locked. When the guards looked up and saw Sulayman alayhi salam returning, the real one this time, they fell to their knees. The king was back, but the king who came back was not the king who had left. This is the moment the Quran picks the story up in its own voice. Surah Sa'd, the second half of the 34th verse. Thumma anab. 2 words. Allah's complete commentary on Sulayman's return to his throne. Then he turned back. Then he repented. Then he came home, not to his palace, but to his Lord. In the very next verse is the dua we read at the start. Rabbi ghafir li wa habli mulkan la yanbaghi li ahadin min ba'di, innaka antal wahhab. My Lord, forgive me, and grant me a kingdom that will not belong to anyone after me. You are the bestower. People have struggled with this prayer for centuries. Why would a prophet, after being humbled this way, ask for more power? Does that not sound like the opposite of what someone learns in exile? The scholars, including Ibn Kathir, explain it like this. Before the 40 days, Sulayman had ruled a kingdom with the help of Allah. After the 40 days, he understood something he had not understood before. The kingdom was never his, not for a single second. Every breath of wind, every loyal Jinn, every obedient bird was a daily gift renewed in every instant by the bestower. So when he asked for a kingdom no one would ever inherit, he was not asking for a trophy. He was asking for the testimony of Allah's generosity to be carved into the memory of mankind. He was asking that for the rest of time the world would look at his kingdom and say only one thing. Only Allah could have done that. Not a man, not a bloodline, not a ring. Allah, and Allah gave it to him. The very next verse, Surah Sa'd 36. فَسَخَّرْنَا لَهُ الرِّيحَ تَجْرِي بِأَمْرِهِ رُخَانٍ حَيْثُ أَصَبَ. So we subjected the wind to him, flowing gently by his command, wherever he directed. The wind, after the 40 days, blew gently, not as a display of power. The man it served had learned that a kingdom does not need to roar to be a kingdom. So here is the question this whole video opened with. Why did Allah let a Jinn steal the throne of his own prophet? The Quran answers it inside the same ayah it asks. Thumma anab. Then he turned back. The whole structure of the verse is built around the turning back. Allah did not say, we took his kingdom and felt sorrow. He said, we tested him, something else sat on the throne, and then he came home. The story is built around the homecoming, not the loss. Sometimes Allah removes what he has given, not because he no longer wants the servant to have it. He removes it because there is no other road that brings the servant home. The exile is the road. This is not unique to Sulayman, it is the pattern. Yusuf alayhi salam was thrown in a well before he was placed over the treasuries of Egypt. Musa alayhi salam left his palace and shepherded sheep in Madian for 10 years before he was sent to Pharaoh. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was wrapped in a blanket, shaking after his first encounter with Jibril alayhi salam. Allah is not afraid of the exile. The exile is part of the construction, and there is a second layer scholars often point to. Everything Allah gives is an amana, a trust. A trust by definition is something that can be asked back. Surah Al-Hadid reminds us that we are trustees of what we hold, not owners. Sulayman's test was the dramatic, visible version of a test every Muslim is given in a smaller form. The house, the health, the children, the reputation, none of it is yours, all of it is on loan. And when Allah, in His wisdom, takes any of it back, even for a 40-day moment, the only response that matters is the one Sulayman gave. The kingdom Sulayman ruled after the exile was not bigger than the one he ruled before. It was the same wind, the same Jinn, the same throne. What had changed was the man sitting on it. That was what Allah was after the whole time. You are not Sulayman alayhi salam, none of us are. But every one of us rules a small kingdom. Your body is a kingdom. Your household is a kingdom. Your reputation is a kingdom. Your time, your mind, your peace of heart. Allah has placed you over each of them. He has handed you a small ring of authority within their walls. And every one of us has a saka waiting. Not always a literal jinn. Sometimes the impostor is a whisper that says, take off the ring just for a second and hand it to something else. Sometimes it is an attachment, a person, a job, a craving that we let sit on the throne where Allah should be sitting. Sometimes the impostor is our own nafs, wearing our own face so well that we mistake its voice for our own. When that impostor takes the throne of the heart, what happens is exactly what happened in Sulayman's palace. The wind keeps blowing, life keeps moving, but it moves now for a king we would never have crowned if we had seen its face clearly. The story leaves every viewer with one question. When Allah, in His mercy, lets you lose the throne for a little while, do you spend those 40 days angry, demanding to know why, blaming the people who did not recognize you? Or do you spend them quietly on a shore somewhere, learning who you really are when the kingdom is gone? The whole answer is in 2 words, thumma anab. Turn back. There is one verse the scholars have written volumes on, and I want to end with it. In Surah An-Naml, after the throne of the Queen of Saba is brought to Sulayman from Yemen in the blink of an eye, his reaction is recorded. The 40th verse, قَالَ هَذَا مِنْ فَضْلِ رَبِّي لِيَبْلُوَانِي أَشْكُرُ أَمْ أَكْفُرُ. He said, this is from the bounty of my Lord, to test me, whether I will give thanks or be ungrateful. A miracle happens in his throne room. A gift no human could have imagined appears in front of him. His first thought is not, I deserve this. His first thought is, this is a test. That sentence could only come from a man who had been a fisherman. It is the proof that the 40 days worked. It is the line that tells you, more than any other line in the Quran, that the man ruling the kingdom now is not the man who lost it. He is the man who came home.